I mean, I honestly just kind of forget how we intro these every single time, Carl. But I guess we are back with another Wiki Weekdays podcast. And thank you all for joining us. I, myself, am Lucas Holland, and I am joined by my co-host, Karl Smallwood, here today.
Hello.
We are here to, bring a Wiki article each for, I guess, the judgment of the viewers, because we want to know which Wiki won this week.
Yes, I believe there was no theme this week, but I've got a sneaky suspicion we might have brought the same Wiki.
I don't think we have, because I haven't picked something that is necessarily relevant. So I'll be surprised.
Because I just said, what's yours about? And you said video games. And mine's also about video games, but it's something very specifically about video games that I read through and was like, mate, we need to cover this.
Okay. I'm excited. So, Carlin, if you have, got something to bring to the table, why don't you kick us off with the very first Wiki of the podcast?
Okay, so the first Wiki I'd like to cover is the Wikipedia entry, a link to which you can find below, on the Super Mario Bros. Film, the 90s version.
Okay, so we'll say, Nintendo-themed podcast today.
Okay, so I was close, but we've not got the same thing now.
We have not got the same thing, but we've both picked something Nintendo-related indeed.
Okay, then. So, for anyone who doesn't know about it, because that's it, I've never seen this. I'm only aware of its reputation. It feels like a movie that no one has seen, but people know about. It's in a weird place in terms of, pop culture.
Yeah, I definitely think, people a little bit older than us are the ones that will have seen it when it's come out. I think a lot of people have watched it in a similar way to, a movie like The Room, where people go and intentionally watch bad movies that have, that meme factor to them. But no, I never watched it when it came out because I was a year old or whatever, and I've never gone back and watched it since.
Came out in 1993. So for anyone like myself and Lucas who maybe isn't familiar with the Mario Bros. Movie, so Super Mario Bros., also known as Super Mario Bros. The Movie, is a 1993 fantasy adventure film based on Nintendo's Super Mario video game series. It's the first live-action film based on a video game that was feature-length.
Is it based on the Super Mario Brothers, Carl? That's really debatable, isn't it?
It kind of is, and it was directed by the husband and wife team of Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel, and it was written by Who Gives a Fuck, and starring Bob Hoskins as Mario and John Leguizamo as Luigi.
Yeah, that's it's got a trio of good actors in it, of Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, and Dennis Hopper, I believe, is Bowser.
Dennis Hopper as Bowser, yeah. And mate, you wait till we get to the casting section. There is some nonsense in there. So development began after producer Roland Joffe obtained the Mario film rights from Nintendo. So, and for anyone who doesn't know, this movie was so infamously bad that Nintendo went, fuck you, no one's allowed to make things about our movies anymore. Or no one's allowed to make movies based on our products anymore.
That's essentially why it took 30 years to get another Mario Bros. Movie, is because the reputation of this one was so bad.
Well, here we go though, Lucas, but the screenwriters envisioned Super Mario Bros. As a subversive comedy influenced by Ghostbusters and The Wizard of Oz. The game's setting was inspiration was drawn from Super Mario World, with elements drawn from fairy tales and contemporary American culture. That's things up. I've never seen the film. I've seen screenshots, I've seen clips. It's so dark. It's so oppressively.
It's
just dark and dour in tone, and just scene setting and lighting and the set design and stuff like that. There's no colour at all in there, but it was inspired by Ghostbusters, which is somewhat realistic, has those colourful, cool, fun ghosts and visual effects. The Wizard of Oz, which famously is one of the first big colour movies that introduced people to the idea of colour. And the Super Mario World, which is, again, super colourful and vibrant and bright.
Yeah, that is... I would have... If you'd asked me, what movie had inspired this, I can't remember when this other movie came out, timeline-wise, so I'm not sure whether it would work out, but I would have said this was inspired, fucking Blade Runner or something.
Yeah,
from the looks of it, just as you say, this weird, creepy, grey dystopian universe.
Yeah, if you'd have told me it would have been inspired by fairy tales and The Wizard of Oz, I'd be like, what? Where did you get any of that from? Because it's one of the things that everyone knows about it is that nothing looks like it did in the original game except for Mario and Luigi.
Like Toad's just a dude, and then Yoshi's like, oh god, and yeah, Yoshi's just a dude as well, right? And then the Goombas are like these weird trench coat wearing alien people with tiny heads.
Oh man, I'm thinking Dennis Hopper as Bowser with the spikes on his head instead of actually being like a giant. And I think the only time I've ever seen a hairstyle worse than that for a main like villain is in the Tekken movie.
Oh,
where there's a Tekken movie that exists, and they gave the lead bad guy Heihachi's haircut, and it looks so shit because you can't translate that haircut to live action. I'm sorry.
It reminds me of the original X-Men where they were trying to get Hugh Jackman's hair to look like the little quiffed up Wolverine.
The little tufts.
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't work, and I'm glad that they toned it down. And they only have a reference to it in like Logan, where it's the kids shave his beard to look like the Wolverine beard, but he leaves the hair the same.
Yeah, that was hilarious when you look back and go, yeah, they thought that was a good idea.
My favourite bit about watching the first X-Men movie again is that Halle Berry tried to do an African accent. It never stops being funny that she tried to do an African accent, absolutely fucking got roasted for how bad it was, and then drops it in every subsequent film.
And, you know, a similar thing happened with Scarlet Witch, right? Like, slowly just loses that fake Eastern European-ish accent. And, Halle Berry, though, delivers the greatest line in all of cinema, right?
Yeah, what happens to a frog when it gets struck by lightning? Same thing that happens to everything else. Finally, for the film, just as the intro is, released on May 28th, 1993, it was a critical and financial failure, grossing just $38 million on a $50 million budget, and it has appeared on several lists of the worst films ever made, although it has developed a cult following. It has been reappraised by some as a cult classic. Which I guess it kind of is. It stands out as this very... It's interesting, at the very least, is something you could say about it. Of like, how did you interpret Mario like this?
And I think it's very, like, as you say, interesting, I think is the right word. And when the new Mario Bros. Movie came out, I understand that there was a subsect of people that were like, look, I'd rather have this weird, wild interpretation rather than this super safe, Despicable Me, Illumination, esque, just the most 7 out of 10 safe move, safe bet to get yourself $1 billion that you could possibly have. And I understand the realm for both, and I get that there's room for both types of movie, but
there is
when people started taking it too far of the 93 movie's way better. It's no, that's too far.
You got the nail on the head there. It's interesting. It's interesting to look at. It's interesting to discuss, and as we're about to find out, making it was also very interesting. So we have here the cast. We went through the cast here of Bob Hoskins as Mario, John Leguizamo as Luigi Mario, Dennis Hopper as President Cooper. Fisher Stevens as Iggy Cooper. Well, that's not my favourite role with Fisher Stevens. My favourite Fisher Stevens role is in what is it now? Short Circuit, where he plays an Indian guy.
Oh,
and they paint him in brown face, and he puts on a mock Indian accent.
I can't remember who Fisher Stevens is. Oh, right, yeah.
As soon as you look up Short Circuit and you realise that he was just going, Johnny Five, putting on a super racist Indian accent, it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so development. So this, Lucas, are you ready?
I know a couple of bad things about how bad it got on set to the point where, Bob and John were just openly getting drunk on set to get themselves through the filming process, right?
They were indeed, yes. But the development is also quite kind of interesting. So we have here, the suggestion for a film based on Super Mario Bros. Was first put forward by Roland Joffe during a script meeting at his production company. Joffe met Nintendo of America president Hiroshi Yamauchi's son-in-law. Didn't even meet the guy, he met his son-in-law. He presented him with an initial draft of the script. 1 month after their meeting, he went to Nintendo's headquarters in Kyoto and met Yamauchi himself. He pitched to Yamauchi the story in which Nintendo receiving interest in the project. He left with a $2 million contract, giving him temporary control over the character of Mario.
That is
Nintendo.
Wild. Can you imagine?
They bought Mario for $2 million.
That's similar to when you realise that, Marvel back in the day were selling rights the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and the Hulk for a pittance.
Someone bought the rights to the Fantastic Four for $500,000. And as an idea of how little Marvel gave a shit, there was a guy, Joe, that ill-fated Fantastic Four movie from the 90s.
The one that doesn't exist, but does
Exists,
exist.
technically.
Yeah.
We maybe can cover that on another episode, because the production of that's also very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why that got pushed back by a year or so is because Marvel had sold the rights to just Johnny Storm to like a kids' TV show. When you wanted to make a kids' TV show based on just Johnny Storm, that never went anywhere.
And I guess
it's crazy.
It's weird to me that Johnny Storm can be sold separately from the Fantastic Four. And
exactly.
Like
That's the thing. The fact Marvel broke up Marvel's first family.
Yeah.
Just to sell Johnny Storm for like $200,000 or something like that. And so Nintendo would retain merchandising rights for the film through a creative partnership. And here's the bit where my eyes just bulged out my head and I went, oh, this is great. When Yamauchi asked Joffrey why Nintendo should sell the rights to Leitmotiv over a bigger company, Joffrey assured them that Nintendo would have more control over the film. However, Nintendo stated they had no interest in creative control and believed that the Mario brand was strong enough to allow an experiment with an outside industry.
Boy, they did not know what they were getting themselves into when they said that.
They walked that the fuck back for that new one, didn't they? Of like, Mario's a strong enough brand where we don't need to have our hands on it. It's like when the Sonic movie got made, isn't it?
Mm.
And you had the original creator of Sonic being like, why does that horrible monster creature have human teeth? And it turns out that Sega didn't ask to see any of it. They had no creative input whatsoever because they didn't give a shit.
Until the moment that trailer hit and they were, wait, hang on, what's going on?
Yeah.
I do find it funny now, though, yeah, where it's Miyamoto. It is basically got creative control over Nintendo and is just super hands-on with the development of the new Mario movie. And
you've got to be that.
Obviously, I'm sure that it wasn't that he was like on top of them all the time, but yeah, you can see that apart from maybe like the questionable way they did voice acting, like there's a debate to be had around that, but like just like everything is super intricate and super to the like Mario Bible to the T.
Yeah, under the thumb of Nintendo, like sign off on everything. And it's crazy that companies back then just didn't care. Like you said, you talked about Marvel giving away, selling individual characters like a la carte to anyone who bid on them.
And obviously that was because Marvel were really struggling as a company at the time. But yeah, that you can see that has been a move where maybe it temporarily saved the company, but has now put them under absolute wreck and ruin for so many years over disputes over contracts and film rights and stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like it was a bad idea. It was a good idea at the time. With the gift of hindsight, it's such a baffling creative decision. But it continues. Joffrey would later say, I think they looked at the movie as some sort of strange creature, and it was kind of rather interesting to see if we could walk or not. He wondered, how do we catch this wonderful mixture of images and inputs and strangeness? And it says here, the first screenplay was written by Oscar-winning screenwriter Barry Morrow. So they had an Oscar-winning screenwriter working on the script. His story followed the brothers of Mario and Luigi on an existential road trip, similar to his prior film, Rain Man. And production titled the script Drain Man.
See, I was already laughing before Drain Man. Drain Man, fuck me. Just the idea, though, that they're like, we've got the rights to the Mario Bros. Movie. What do we do? How about we get the guy in that made Rain Man? Fair enough. Good movie at the time. Like,
good script.
Oscar-winning guy. Script. Like, but then let's make the Mario movie a road trip akin to just that movie. It's like Rain Man and Mario Bros. Have never been like similar in my
head.
Mind.
No. It says that while the script was well received, it was abandoned because it said like it was going for like this large, far-reaching thing and this like existential journey. It was like an odyssey, and like it was more of a drama piece than a comedy, to say here. And it's that screenwriters Jim Genuine and Tom S. Parker were brought on to write a more traditional adaptation. Bowser is a businessman played by Dennis Hopper with
that's the thing.
Pubes on his head.
This version that we got is at least more traditional. That's the only thing they say. Even if it was 1% more traditional, it was more traditional than it being Rain Man.
It says here that right away they said the best way to do this is essentially have a journey into this world, not unlike The Wizard of Oz. His and Parker's take on the story was to subvert and satirize fairy tale cliches and focus on the relationship between Mario and Luigi. Genuine would later say, essentially, we did what Shrek did. Not successful, though, was it?
No. I do not put the in the same ballpark at all.
No, but that's the thing. It sounds like years later, like they're trying to rewrite history of like, well, basically we were trying to do what Shrek did, and like I get the feeling that after they'd be like trying to implant in people's head, like, you know, if it had come out later, it'd been better received. It's like, no, it still sucks.
If we'd been given a bit more of time and money, we would have succeeded completely in making this amazing movie.
Yeah. Joffe offered the director's position to Harold Ramis. Although he was a fan of the video games, he declined the opportunity and later said that he was glad about it. The Associated Press would later observe that this was the smartest decision of his entire career.
Is Ramis, is that the guy to
Ghostbusters guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was Ivan Reitman as the director. Harold Ramis was Ivan Spangler, I think it is.
Yeah, that sounds like a clever move in terms of his career.
So directing duties later went to the husband and wife team, Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel. Morton said, "We come from the Tim Burton School of Filmmaking. Because our background is in animation and comic books. We started off basking everything in reality, then tried to have fun and exaggerate as much as possible." Joffe, Morton and Jankel agreed that their approach to adapting the video game should follow the darker tone popularised by the Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So when I think darker tone, I think, woohoo! So that's the thing, like, you can do a darker take on like some sort of deal, but when like there's nothing dark about the Mario universe, like he is joke they make about Dante of like wacky, crazy Wahoo Pizza Man. Mm-hmm. That's just Mario. Just woohoo!
He's like, literally originally called Jumpman. Like
that's all he does.
He just loves jumping.
Joffe viewed the game as a mixture of Japanese fairy tales and bits of modern Americana. He wanted to create a slightly mythic vision of New York. Screenwriter Parker Bennett elaborated, "Our take on it was that Nintendo interpreted the events from our story and came up with a video game. Basically, we worked backwards. We drew inspiration from Die Hard, Mad Max, and Blade Runner."
I wasn't wrong then. Yeah, I can look at pictures of that movie and go like, that feels very Mad Max also makes sense, but yeah, quite Blade Runner-esque.
Though working well with directors, two of the producers were fired for being too comedic. In a comedy film, the British writing team of Dick Clement and Ian LaFrancois were brought on to deliver a more adult and feminist tone. I don't know what that means. Like, isn't the whole plot of the film rescuing a princess?
Yeah, that thing is I have a very loose grasp over what the movie's actually about. So I'm not sure how much of a feminist tone the movie does have. Probably not enough, if that was their aim.
Either way, but do you want to go on to casting? Because, mate, there is some stuff in here.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So after securing the rights to the film, Leitmotiv began casting for the characters. Initially, Dustin Hoffman expressed interest in playing Mario. So the Rain Man comparisons keep going.
Yeah.
However, Arakawa did not believe he was right for the role. Danny DeVito was offered both the role of director and Mario.
Where's that universe? Where is that timeline?
That would be so good.
I want the timeline where we get Danny DeVito as Mario directing himself.
Oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Michael Keaton were approached to play King Koopa, but both turned down the role. We could have had Arnold Schwarzenegger King Koopa.
We could have had a Danny DeVito Arnold Schwarzenegger movie that's the Mario Bros. Like the Koopa versus Mario battle.
Do you know what they should have done? They should have cast Arnold Schwarzenegger as Luigi and just done the twins a year early.
Yeah. That's literally what I was thinking.
Tom Hanks was considered for the role of Luigi, but a string of recent box office failures dropped him from consideration. Oh, yeah, his star was definitely fading. That of Tom Hanks.
He dodged a fucking bullet there.
Eventually, actors Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo were cast as Mario and Luigi. Initially, Hoskins disliked the script and did not want to do another children's film, because he'd just done Roger Rabbit.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, of
He
course.
wondered how he would prepare for the role. He said, I'm the right shape, I've got a mustache, I worked as a plumber's apprentice and set the plumber's boots on fire with a blowtorch. His casting was described as a no-brainer, an unabashed, shameless physical typecasting. He was brilliant at assuming the character.
And, you look at him, and
He
yeah,
looks like Mario.
He's a bit old, obviously, but that again, interpretations can happen. But, combine that with the fact that he obviously just been in that comedy of Roger Rabbit,
Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
acting against CG characters and stuff. Like, that sounds perfect.
Yeah, the only person I think would have been more perfect would have been Danny DeVito.
Potentially, but they also asked what a Pikachu is, so...
Yeah. Well, imagine... I'm now thinking Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mario and Luigi would have been so good.
That would be incredible.
It would have been fucking hilarious.
They would have been the Super Mario Brothers.
Leguizamo said of his casting, what I liked about the script was the action and adventure that was involved. He jokes that you always see a lot of Italians playing Latin people like Al Pacino in Scarface. Now it's my turn. Do you know what? I like that.
I didn't like the fact that, he recently came out and was like, no, me, big star John Leguizamo, doesn't like the fact that they got non-Italian people to play Mario and Luigi. I was like, it's just a kids' movie. Like, come on, it doesn't really matter. It's just they got some big stars in. That's what they do.
It says here that the last thing about casting is that musician Mojo Nixon, who I'm not familiar with, was cast as Toad because production wanted an actual musician for the character. Their first choice was Tom Waits, and he was unavailable. And if you don't know Tom Waits, I'm just going to describe how someone once described his voice. And they said that Tom Waits sounds as if you got his voice box, drowned it in bourbon, and then ran it over 15 times on a gravel road.
They're not wrong.
And now imagine that voice coming out of Toad.
You know what? Again, I think if you lean harder into it, like, maybe I'd be more interested. But the fact that it's just this movie clearly became a total mess.
Yeah, it's that thing as well of like I said, the casting of Bob Hoskins is great, and so is Leguizamo. It's just if they'd just leaned into how absurd the universe was.
And I wonder how much of it was inspired by, was it the Super Mario Bros. Show that had like the live action Mario and Luigi?
I wish we'd just got the 3-hour version of that.
I mean, I
just them dancing like that on the.
I don't really know much about that, but I wonder how much of it was inspired by them watching that, and then not looking at the video games themselves.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like a lot of people involved didn't really play much of the video games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unlike Chris Pratt, who played it for all of his life. Jumping
on Goombas, loves it. Oh my god! It's just that I've got on like the creature effects because this is something people maybe don't know about the Mario movie. That it's one of the most influential films in regards to special effects.
Really?
Yeah. So the creature effects were done concurrently with Jurassic Park's production. So we had to be conscious of the dinosaur designs for Super Mario Bros. For example, Yoshi was made to look more cartoonish than realistic, and he cost the modern equivalent of $1 million to make.
That was like, 2% of the budget?
Yep.
Just on Yoshi.
Yeah, originally the Goombas were only background characters, but their final designs were so impressive that Morton and Jankel promoted them to major main characters. That's the thing. If you put an edit in this or you put a picture like or someone right now, if you listen to it, just on your phone, Google Goombas Mario Bros. Movie live action, and just think they were so impressive they've given them a major part of the film.
There's already been a couple of times when I've gone like, don't worry, future Lucas will put this into the edit of the podcast, and like, obviously podcasts are like more lightly edited, so I'm probably gonna forget again. So bear with me with the podcasts. We do like, again, there was a lighter edit to them, but yeah, I always forget whenever I'm in a podcast and like, maybe I'll put this in, and it's already been happening.
So folks at home, just Google that if you want to see how. That's why me and Lucas are laughing at that. And then visual effects. Super Mario Bros. Innovated and introduced many techniques considered pivotal in the transition from practical to digital visual effects in major motion pictures. It is the first film to use the software Autodesk Flame, now an industry standard. It is also the first film scanned with a digital intermediate, allowing the compositing of more than 700 visual effects shots. It's one of the first movies where they actively integrated digital effects with live action effects.
That's really interesting, and that's one thing that I always find so cool is even from a dumpster fire like this movie, there can be progress made in certain elements. Like,
Yep.
there can be significant pushes forward in VFX on a movie that turns out to like not even make their money back because it was so bad. And similar to game design, where you can look back through like certain games that were not considered great, but maybe had like one element that was super impressive at the time.
Yeah, like this one we say is considered pivotal in the transition from practical to digital visual effects because it seamlessly blended the two.
And that does show that, there's always value somewhere in things, but sometimes you got to dig a bit harder than with others.
There's always like, a kernel of corn in that big old pile of shit. And I think the final thing we should go on to is legacy, because this film has a mixed legacy, to be diplomatic. So in a 2007 interview with Hoskins, he said, "The worst thing I ever did, Super Mario Bros. It was a fucking nightmare. The whole experience was a nightmare. He had a husband and wife team directing, whose arrogance had been mistaken for talent. After so many weeks, their own agent told to get off the set. Fucking nightmare. Fucking idiots."
Jesus Christ.
And as you said, Lucas, him and Leguizamo would get drunk before shooting every day and would openly be drinking during takes.
It's got to be bad.
In a 2011 interview, when asked, "What's the worst job you've done? What's your biggest disappointment? If you could edit your past, what would you change?" His answer to all three was Super Mario Bros. His son, Jack Hoskins, was a fan of the film and praised his performance.
And I will say as well that I would never want something that, like, I guess, life-changing to be erased from my history. It's like, if I was Bob Hoskins, I'd be like, no, you've got to look at this like this is a life lesson moment, and this is a moment you'll never forget and never have, like, a worse experience than that. It's like, at that point, you don't really want it to be gone from your life because...
Yeah, he's clearly saying it, like, jokingly, isn't it?
Of course, yeah.
Like, they seem to have set him up for that answer because they kind of know what they were doing.
And, yeah, like, they definitely have. But, yeah, it's just one of those things where sometimes something's so monumentally bad that you never want to forget it because you never want to repeat that mistake ever again.
Yeah. It just serves as an example of what not to do for future generations and yourself. And there was a Leguizamo prepared a video message for the film's 20th anniversary saying, "I'm glad people appreciate the movie. It was the first. Nobody had ever done it before. In retrospect, I'm proud."
And did you say 20th anniversary?
20th anniversary in 2013, yes.
I'm pretty sure 2013 was the year of Luigi as well.
Oh, are you ready for this, though,
The
Lucas?
year of Leguizamo.
But Lucas, this is incredible. Hopper disparaged production, recounting in 2008, repeating basically what Hoskins said. "It was a nightmare. Honestly, that movie, it was a husband and wife directing team who were control freaks and wouldn't talk before they made decisions. Anyway, I was supposed to go down there for 5 weeks. I was there for 17. It was so over budget." He later added, "My 6-year-old son at the time, he's 18 now, he said to me, 'Dad, I think you're probably a pretty good actor, but why did you play that terrible King Koopa guy in Super Mario Bros?' And I said to him, 'Well, Henry, I did that so you could have shoes.' And he responded, 'Dad, I don't need shoes that badly.'"
Oh dear. So, I think everyone just remember that when the next person you see online argues like that this movie is better than the new Super Mario Bros. Movie.
Yeah, and like everyone involved with it is like, "It was a nightmare. I hated it. I had to get drunk to avoid it."
Like, King Koopa's child said it wasn't worth the paycheck to get me like fucking
I would rather
shoes on my feet and food on my plate.
I would rather not have shoes.
Oh,
yeah,
dear.
and it continues and it says that just there was a 2023 animated film that made $1 billion. It made literally 50 times what this one did.
It's on track to probably become the most
the highest grossing
animated movie ever. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Which something needs to, not necessarily Mario Bros. Something needs to, so it's not the Lion King remake anymore. Please,
yeah,
it hurts me so much to see that statistic.
And there's just like one other detail I want to mention. It's like the music, because the music, it didn't really use much music from the games, which is a crime, because that music's great.
You know, Mario Bros. Music is shit, right? Yeah.
It's just stupid video game music. But you know who did the soundtrack?
Hans Zimmer.
No, Alan Silvestri.
Okay.
Who you may recognise as the guy who composed the Avengers theme.
Fucking hell.
So there was some talent working on this movie, and it's like it seems like it was just the directors were just too full of themselves to admit that they, bitten off more than they could chew.
Like literally, a good composer, good screenwriters, good cast, and unlimited creative control as given from Nintendo as well.
Yep.
So just free reign to make a great movie, and industry-defining effects as well. And yet it still ended up this bad.
And an Academy Award-winning composer.
Just Jesus Christ.
If you think about all the tools they actually had, they had initially a script from a Academy Award-winning screenwriter. They had Dennis Hopper, John Leguizamo, Bob Hoskins as the three members of the principal cast. Mm-hmm. They had an award-winning composer working on the soundtrack. They had one of the most valuable, well-known IPs on planet Earth with which to make their movie. They had the full backing of Nintendo, a near unlimited budget, because they went $30 million over budget and still got to make it, and no one give a shit.
Yeah,
absolute total creative control, and just nah.
Just from the sounds of it, we weren't there. We haven't even watched the movie, but it just, as you say, sounds like everyone agrees. Just two shitty directors fucked it all,
ruined the entire thing for everybody, and yeah, that's the Super Mario Bros. 1993 movie. What an experience that was, eh? And I guess before we go into your wiki for this week, Lucas, let's do a bit of housekeeping.
Yeah, we are trying to do a little bit more in terms of being professional with an intro and a little bit of a housekeeping break where we can do some plugs and stuff. So, Karl, have you got anything you would like to plug and promote for yourself?
Yeah, I'll just say my socials and my Twitch profile, which you'll find linked below on the YouTube version and on the podcast version, which I'm not sure when it's going out. You'll probably find it there.
That is true, yeah, and similar to me, I would suggest people go over to my Twitch where you might see me playing Super Mario Bros at some point, but
not watching the movie though.
I'm not watching the movie for definite, but I play a lot of Nintendo games in general over there. I have my Tunic Tuesdays where I'm going through every Zelda game in existence and eventually making my way through the entire series. Play a lot of Pokemon on Thursdays and stuff like that, so yeah, go check that out.
Yeah, and for anyone out there listening to this who has something they'd like to promote, because this is obviously a fresh channel, and I think we're doing all right so far. We've managed to get monetized in a week. If you'd like to have something promoted on the podcast, reach out. Again, at the links you'll probably find below or on our socials.
Yeah,
like promote,
I think it's just wikiweekends@gmail.com is the email address for this channel specifically if you want to have a bit of an inquiry business-wise.
Yeah, that's when you could be on the ground floor. You could do it. So yeah, just reach out if you've got any of those. Because otherwise, just with me and Lucas every week saying, go check out our Twitch channels.
It will get a bit more professional as we write some housekeeping notes maybe. But yeah, for now, we're just, as we say, we're a new channel getting off the ground and we're working things out a little bit at a time.
Yeah, it's not like we've already got a channel that we ran for 5 years. Shut up.
No one needs to know about that, Karl. It's fine.
With that out of the way, Lucas, you said you've got something also Nintendo related, yes?
I do indeed. And
okay.
This may seem a little bit of a random pick, but I will explain why it was slightly less random than you might think.
Okay.
And I want to talk about the Nintendo Wii U.
Ooh.
And I wonder if Karl can put two and two together. And I think Karl's frozen. I think that's what's happened. Are you back?
Yeah, okay. You cut out for a split. You cut out just as you were about to say, I want to talk about, and then...
Well, the thing is, you froze just as on my screen I'd said it. So I was like, is Karl in such a disarray that I mentioned the Nintendo Wii U?
Oh, okay. So I was trying to follow because I was like, are you doing like a Rocky Horror Picture Show thing? Like, trembling with anticipation. The Wii U. So the Wii U. Oh, one of Nintendo's. Today we're talking about two of Nintendo's, I'd argue, two of their biggest missteps.
Yeah, maybe two of the at least like mainstream, most remembered ones. And yeah, like, can you guess why I specifically wanted to talk about the Wii U this week?
Is it because someone out there is like, do you remember the Wii U? It wasn't as bad as people said it was.
I mean, definitely was and wasn't, and we'll get into that. But the reason is because like PlayStation recently announced the Project Q, which is essentially just like the Wii U game tablet as like the PlayStation version. I was like, wow, 10 years later and PlayStation 5 are like bringing back the Wii U. Just
yeah, it's like the Wii U was maligned. It's like it was a Fisher Price looking piece of made in China shit.
It was, and that Project Q, and like
you've
right
got one.
Here
show it
next
off.
to me, just like you can see, like, I know it's a bit dirty and stuff because, like, you know, it's a Wii U pad, I guess, not looked after very well, but it's just this shiny piece of like very clickety clackety plastic, and it's
really big as well, which is why it looks like one of those knockoff iPads you give to 5-year-olds in the car that just like plays Bar Bar Black Sheep and teaches them the letters.
And that's the thing, you can see the 4-year gap between that pad, which by the way wasn't the actual console, that was just the game controller for the console, and they had like a separate console that did all the processing, so that isn't big because it's got a load of processing power in it.
And it's certainly not big because it has a good battery life either.
No, and compare that to like the sleek Nintendo Switch that came out 4 years later that is a third of the thickness, and it still feels quite toyetic because it is Nintendo, but like a bit more of a classier design and feel to it overall.
It has a lot more like shelf appeal. I think the term that's used is like you put it on a shelf and it looks really nice, and it has like the brightly coloured things on either side, and then all the marketing like focused around like the
really satisfying clicks and the bringing out the dark, and that's I think maybe one of the greatest comparisons between the Wii U and the Switch is like the way that they announced each console. Of like there was so much confusion with the Wii U, but then you look at the Switch announcement trailer, and that shit was just really understandable. Like you put it in, it goes on the TV. You take your Joy-Cons off. Just super simple, easy to sell, easy to understand.
You also cut out again for a second there.
Oh, okay. Well, I was basically just explaining, like how easier and better they communicated the Switch in the reveal trailer.
Oh yeah, like looking back at like the Wii U trailer, where people legit thought, "Is this just an upgrade to the Wii?" Because that's how they sold it. It's called the Wii U.
Well, yeah, because the Wii was so successful. Obviously, they were using that branding to bring in the Wii U, but people weren't sure whether the tablet was just an addition to the Wii.
Well, that's the thing. If you go back and watch the original reveal trailer, they never show the base console.
And then when they did, the base console looks like a really just rounded off Wii.
Yeah, it looks like it's an upgrade, and that's it cannot be overstated like how much that hobbled the announcement trailer. Because like when you announce something like that about a new console, and 50% of the people watching at home don't know what it is you're trying to sell them.
And even at the time, some journalists at the event weren't quite sure what it was. They didn't come out and say, this is a brand new console, this is the successor to the Wii. They just went, here's the Wii U, showed off a trailer where they used both like Wiimote and Nunchuk and Wiimotes and the Wii U gamepad, all like in combination with one another. They didn't show the new box, and then didn't clarify anything afterwards.
Yeah, and it's a great example of something that happens all the time when it comes to like the spheres of technology and gaming. And it is the people who work on something get so like, I don't want to say drink the Kool-Aid, that's a bit extreme, but like they get so involved with like the ecosystem that they forget there are people who don't have the knowledge that they do. And you can see that with the Wii U of like, obviously everyone at Nintendo who's worked on that, well, we know it's a separate console, but because they know that it is, it never occurred to them to explain that to people who don't have the 3 years of like developmental knowledge that they have.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but obviously because like we've got a new console and a new tablet, it's like, but you didn't show the new console, and the tablet was working in combination with Wii controllers and Wii looking games with like Mii's on them and stuff.
Yeah, I still think they would have probably done much better if they'd called it the Super Wii.
Something like that, yeah. And
Just follow the naming convention like the Nintendo Entertainment System. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It's a direct upgrade over the previous one.
And it's weird because, like, yeah, the Wii was already a confusing name, but because it had such a simple selling point of the Wii Sports, like, that kind of got over the confusion with the, like, it's we together playing together, and like really the Wii was
in the logo. It's like two friends sat next to each other, which I kind of like.
Yeah, but even at the time of the Wii, I think like when they changed it from the Nintendo Revolution to the Nintendo Wii, everyone was kind of like, "What's Wii mean?" And then obviously it was Wii Sports and the clear like adverts and stuff that they kind of sold that concept with. But with the Wii U, it didn't have that, and the U, it's like, what does I can't even really remember like the Wii U kind of it's like we play together, but then you play on the tablet or something. I'm not sure.
It was the marketing was a bit all over the place. And what's this like the PlayStation? Is it PlayStation Q? It's called.
So Project Q, they haven't announced
Project
what the
Q.
actual PlayStation.
I'm gonna have to Google it to remind myself what it looks like, because I do remember it looking a bit.
It is just like a big, I think, like 8-inch screen in the middle of a DualSense controller. And
yeah, it looks as well. It looks really rickety.
Yes, yeah.
Like, because it has like the handles of the PlayStation, like the handles of a bike or a like steering wheel. They look so much more flimsy than just like the
solid box that was a Wii U. Or a Switch. And I'm sure it probably isn't, I hope, super flimsy. And I know it's not exactly the Wii U, it is a remote play device, but just kind of, in the more meme mindset of like, oh, isn't it funny that they've basically just made a Wii U? And I know they haven't. It's a very different device and everything, but yeah, it's just kind of like, it reminded me of the same essence. And I think we've lost Karl again.
No, you cut out for a second now, back.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to be quiet when that happens.
Yeah, apparently we're dealing with some Discord problems or some shit.
We're getting some lag ass spikes. So yeah, that's like Project Q and the Wii U talked about now. But hang on, what's Wikipedia have to say about the Wii U?
So yeah, we'll get onto the actual Wiki article now that we've shat on the concept of the Wii U a bit. So the Wii U, it just, like, obviously has the way to pronounce Wii U, and it's, like, Weeyyoo in, like, big capital letters, like, Wii
just
U!
Wii U!
It's a
little joke, isn't it, of, like, how do you call an ambulance for Nintendo? It's like, Wii U, Wii U, Wii U!
But it's a home console developed by Nintendo as the successor to the Wii. Released...
You got a problem there, mate. You said is... You should say past tense. Was. This thing's dead. Do you know when like a celebrity dies and they go in and edit and it just says was?
Yeah.
They should do that with a Wii U because that shit's dead.
Famously discontinued just before the launch of the Switch. Like, they didn't even let it tail off. Like, say for example PlayStation 5, they only discontinued the PS4 like a couple of years after the PS5 was about, and they were still producing them because they understand... that's appealing to, like, a market that's looking for a cheaper console and isn't as bothered about high-fidelity graphics as much, etc. But, yeah, the Wii U didn't even last until the Switch was out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it got released in late 2012, and it is the first 8th-generation video game console, which competed with Microsoft's Xbox One and Sony's PlayStation 4. And is very... generous to say that it competed with the Xbox One and PS4.
It didn't. It competed in the same way that when when I'm watching a film and someone goes underwater and like they hold their breath and I sit at home and I hold my breath. It's the same. I'm competing against that person. I'm not. I'm like I'm taking part in my head, but I'm not part of what's going on screen.
And it's the first Nintendo console to support HD graphics.
Are you fucking kidding? That counted as HD?
I mean, most games, I think, were like 720p, maybe up to 900p. So, to put that into perspective, like, Xbox One kind of got shit for being like a brand new console, and most games were running at like 900p, which is a lower resolution than full HD, which is considered like 1080p. Nintendo's games were barely hitting that 900p mark for the most part, and hitting like 720p, which is like the low bar for what is considered high definition graphics.
Yeah. Is what you're probably watching this YouTube video in.
I mean, 1080p is normally, right? Like, it depends when I keep telling YouTube, like, use more data for higher quality videos, it's got it 360p. I'm like,
Yeah, of course.
what are you doing? Ugh. I understand that frustration for people watching, but yeah, the system's primary controller is the Wii U gamepad, which again wasn't really communicated very well.
No.
It features an embedded touchscreen, directional buttons, analog sticks, and action buttons. The touchscreen notably was like, I think capacitive, I think it is, where it's like it only has one input at a time.
So you can't swipe.
Yeah, you can't like use two fingers on it at once to like zoom in or anything. It's just poke. Which even when like the DS came out, that felt like it was a little bit outdated, and then the 3DS, and then the Wii U is get better touchscreens, Nintendo, please. We've been used to smartphones for like 10 years at this point. And the screen can be used either as a supplement to the main display or in supported games to play the game directly on the gamepad. And that was, one legitimate feature which was quite useful. You couldn't get very far away from the console. The limit you could get was like 30 feet away from the console. But when it was that classic, same that happens a lot with the Switch, where like, I want to watch TV, can you get off the TV? And then you can just play it on your gamepad. Super handy.
Or like when we would play multiplayer games, like we play like Smash Bros on it. And it'd be like, okay, so we sat in someone's front room, I'm gonna get the gamepad and play over here.
Yeah, like you would always be like, well, I'll sit on the chair furthest away from the TV because I can just play in the gamepad, because Karl always preferred that over a GameCube pad or anything else.
I only did that to flex, of like, I want to get good playing on the gamepad.
Karl that plays with exclusively a left Joy-Con only when we play Smash Bros. Ultimate, so that he can flex on us.
No, I'm pretty good at it as well.
You are pretty good at it. Like, it was a rocky path of learning, but you got
especially learning Ryu. Yeah, learning those doing fucking Dragon Punch inputs on a single Wii U gamepad when your hands are like twice the size they expect you to interface that console with. Yeah,
and I think my favourite kind of way of utilising the Wii U gamepad was always with asymmetrical gameplay.
We'd have like a map on your screen or something like that.
Well, no, I'm more thinking like the multiplayer games where, like, for example, Nintendo Land did it really well, where you could have 4 people on Wiimotes on the TV being like the Animal Crossing villagers picking up sweets, and then you've got a 5th person playing on the Wii U gamepad with a different perspective, and then that person's like hunting the other villagers down and can like see a wider variation of like the map so that they could hunt people down better and stuff.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff like it was similar, not similar, but it's like the same kind of idea as like a dungeon master where you're all playing the same game, it's just that one person's playing it in a different way.
And that's really, for me, when the Wii U super succeeded. And there weren't
as a
many
party
games.
Console,
there weren't many games that did it well. But when games did do it, like Nintendo Land was an experience I enjoyed for years. And it's just kind of a shame that Nintendo didn't market everything very well. B, that Nintendo didn't pack in Nintendo Land with a lot of the consoles. You don't have to buy it separately. And C, just like most games didn't have that kind of functionality, and just a lot of the time, as you said, just the gamepad was used as like your map screen.
Yeah, it's like that tweet that goes around every now and again of like video games need the little buddy mode. Of like, you need to, like, for your kid or younger brother or something like that to be able to just play as like a little buddy who helps you but can't be hurt.
It's like when Mario Odyssey came out, it's like, a second player can play as Cappy and just have the Cap float about and capture things and stuff. And
yeah, you can pick up coins for me. Like, I'll be in ultimate control of the game, but you control Cappy and you can run around. All right. And that's what that gamepad was used for in a lot of cases. Not a lot of cases, but Nintendo Land. Like, you can just hand that off to someone who doesn't necessarily want to play the game, but still wants to be involved. And like, all you do is you just dick us over. You just press down, really simple gameplay to press a button.
Well, that was one in Rayman Legends. That was meant to be like this exclusive launch title, and the gimmick was that the person on the gamepad could control certain elements. So, like, you know, they could lift up platforms up and down, and they're not doing the actual, like, platforming gameplay. But then, of course, it was like, oh, the Wii U's selling really badly, quick, port it to other consoles, and it's not an exclusive anymore. And
take that system like out.
And it was in there, but obviously it had to be, like, probably, like, dumbed down a little bit or something. I'm not quite sure. But Zombie U was a one that actually made quite use of the gamepad, and I enjoyed for the idea of a zombie survival game of when you press the menu to open up your backpack, you have to look down at the gamepad.
That was a really good way of. That was a really interesting way of doing it, because it adds more tense. It's like
because the game's still playing in the background on your TV, and you see your person
reality.
like scurrying through the backpack about to get attacked by zombies, but you've got to look at the gamepad to do
it's
anything.
Like almost. You can see what they were going for, like where the Wii U was like motion controls, and that was like almost altered reality aspects. Because weren't there some games where you'd hold it up and you'd move around, like to view the area? Mm-hmm. So it's another extension of like the motion control. It's just really poorly implemented and really badly gotten across to.
Again, as soon as like that poor launch happened, you saw a lot of boats swerving completely away from the Nintendo ship, and if they did have games, it was like just cheap ports that hadn't no like real gamepad usage other than like a map on a screen.
Why would we spend all like time and money porting our game over to this thing and putting any effort into it when it's going to sell like 100,000 copies?
Mm-hmm. And
like they had Call of Duty games on that fucking thing, and it didn't have online gameplay.
Yeah, that's one thing where it says here like online functionality centers around the Nintendo Network platform and Miiverse (RIP), an integrated social networking service which allowed users to share content in game-specific communities, and that's maybe one of the smartest like online systems Nintendo's come up with, and they just shut it into the ground. Like
its Miiverse was so fucking good, and I still get giggles when I remember Miiverse stage on Smash Bros, where it's and you just the joke. What's the joke you always make, Lucas, about the stage? I'll describe it, and then you can make your joke. It's a stage where it's just actual messages fans or people who played the character that you played online had left after a win. Would just write down any message or draw a picture on the touch screen, and when you were playing that character, when you got a KO, messages in support of your character would pop up. And how do people use it, Lucas?
Well, you know, some people used it really well and like drew these amazing pieces of artwork, and then other people used it to launch Game of Thrones spoilers onto your screen.
Yeah, so you could just. I remember once I just described Miiverse as you get a dunk with Captain Falcon and just find out that Jon Snow died.
That's literally what happened. It's like it just got a dunk, and it's like Jon Snow dies. Just a piece in the background.
I still never forget when I landed a dunk with Donkey Kong, and it just like 14 different messages all popped up of just Donkey Kong's face saying "expand," and he was so good.
Oh, and I think like that may have been one of the best utilizations of Miiverse, but it was just really interesting. And for anyone on the Switch that's played Splatoon,
it's an extension.
It's the exact same system, but it was for every game, and you could log on to your Wii U, and you had every little game pop up in a circle, and loads of little Miis were like running around, and all the Miiverse posts were coming up, and then we got some great memes of like, why won't my parents stop fighting, and why can't Metroid crawl?
Yeah, I like this game, but my parents fight a lot. Will forever live rent free in my head. Well, that legend who all he did was play games and just go to the water and go, this water looks pretty nice.
And there's like two things, from that era of Nintendo, where it's like, I wish we had Miiverse still, and I wish we had Street Pass still.
Yes, I do miss that. And the other one I'm going to say is the fact that because Miiverse was Nintendo, it was like very, very heavily
moderated,
which is like, you think back of like, you go onto like social media now and you're on like Twitter and they're just posting like beheading videos and stuff in the responses to news stories, and you go on Nintendo, and it was so heavily moderated that you literally couldn't say anything negative. You had so instead of like and dislike, you had yeah and yeah. Not even no, yeah.
Not nah, just yeah and yeah.
Yeah, it's like yeah. That thing is though, I wish we had that. I wish we had I wish Twitter didn't exist. Or Nintendo bought Twitter and just turned it into Miiverse Part 2, and you're only allowed to post about Nintendo games, and you're only allowed to say whether you yeah or yeah.
Just leave it at yeah. That's all you need. Just how many years do you want to give this thing?
Oh man, do you remember when YouTube announced that we get rid of dislikes, and people actually thought that mattered?
Mm-hmm. I do remember that.
Yeah.
And something else I do remember, Karl, is the response to the Wii U being very mixed.
Is that what it says? That's quite diplomatic.
It's diplomatic, but it was praised for its innovative gamepad controller, which again, the actual control and the feel and the build quality of it was not great, but there were innovative uses of that. It did have improved online functionality over the Wii, but that's not saying much. And it did have full backwards compatibility with both Wii software and peripherals.
I do miss that. It's a shame, innit? Especially when you're looking at PlayStation. It's can I play PS? Fuck you, play PS4 games.
No, you can on the PS5, to be fair.
Can you?
Yes.
Okay. Can you play PS3 games?
No, of course not.
What about PS2? That's the one as well, because it's, I think the best example of, people always go on about, backwards compatibility, why do you want it? Think about the game God of War Ragnarok. God of War Ragnarok is the sequel to God of War 2018, which is the sequel to God of War 2003, or God of War 3, which is itself a sequel to God of War 2, which is a sequel to God of War, which is a sequel to Chains of Olympus and all that good stuff. You can't play any of those games. So there are 8 to 9 games in the God of War series, and only 2 of them can be played on a modern console.
I mean, yes and no, because obviously through the online PlayStation Plus stuff,
they're slowly bringing them back.
Stream, I'm not sure God of War specifically how many titles of the series are on there, but yeah, you can stream PS1, 2, and 3 games on there, but they have limited libraries.
And it's just that weird thing of they're selling God of War 8, but you can't play the first 7 games in the series.
Yeah.
It's always rubbed me the wrong way. It's fair enough if you don't want to make your back catalogue available, but when some of the current catalogue is sequels to things that came out 10 years ago that I can't play.
Yeah, it's you want to charge me 12 quid to play Tekken 1, the game that I already own 3 times. It's there's got to be a better way to do it. But there was many better ways to do the Wii U, apparently. Because it was criticised for its user interface, functionality, and the gamepad's short battery life, which is short.
It's that thing does they made it so big and bulky.
Some DualSense level of battery going on the Wii U.
Well, that's what it's so weird as well, because the 3DS, I think the 3DS didn't have the greatest battery life, but most Nintendo handhelds have largely been praised for having really solid build quality and battery life.
It wasn't a handheld, and it's that weird thing, and same with the Switch when it launched was maybe 3 to 6 hours. The improved battery life now is a lot better, but it's really a weird stepping stone. I think the reason we don't have Street Pass on the Switch was apparently because the Street Pass is a massive drain on the battery, and
it's basically
the Switch already had a really bad battery, but it was not good. But it's also, you look at for example, I'd say the DualSense, or I think that Project Q recently just got a bit more details on it, and it has a 3 to 4 hour battery life. It's we still haven't gotten past having really shit batteries and things.
Yeah, and the problem is as well, people always talk about phones. I've got an Apple phone. People always Apple phones have got really terrible battery life. So they've actually got really good battery life if you turn off all the extraneous bullshit, I guess. So if you put your phone into flight mode and turn on Wi-Fi, your phone will last 3 days. Easy. It's just it's got all the other stuff on there. It's it's insane.
There's so many things running in the background all of the time, and that's where the Switch is just super dialed back, because it's there's no excuse for lack of themes, Nintendo. But I understand why there isn't 8 system programs running in the background at all times. It's just a super simple interface. One app runs at a time. It's like they just wanted to make it as simple and streamlined as possible, because the Wii U was the opposite, and look at what the Wii U did.
Yeah,
the Wii U sold like, I think if we can maybe look.
Get to the sales numbers, and I'll say if anyone out there does have a Switch, if you want a pro tip, put it into flight mode. If you're not playing online, put it in flight mode. You get an extra 2 hours out of it.
So worldwide units sold of the Wii U as of December 31st, 2019 is 13.56 million.
Which sounds like a lot. That sounds like a lot of Wii U's, right? That's like, 13 million people. Are you just now looking at how many Wii's got sold?
I'm going to look up how many Nintendo console sales we've had on other systems.
Okay.
Just so people get a bit more actual understanding of what that means in context.
Yeah, because 13 million sounds like a really big number until you counter that with, here's how many things its direct predecessor sold. So I've got the number in front of me now. If you've not got it yourself.
I've got the list from Nintendo.co.jp, so the official Nintendo website. Statistics here say that the Wii sold a hardware of 101.63 million units.
So yeah, and that's why this was considered such a failure. Imagine we sold 101 million Wii's.
And
we
their
sold
capitalization,
13 million.
The sequel to that, sold about a ninth of what they did, like close to 10% of what the Wii sold.
Yeah.
And the Nintendo Switch, for clarification as well, is 125.62 million units. So yeah, they bounced back extremely well from the failure that was the Wii U. They learned many a lesson, at very least, from the failure of the Wii U. And you go back and look, and the other closest, failure, they don't list the Virtual Boy on here, which did sell less than the Wii U. Yeah. But the other closest one is the GameCube, surprisingly, which the
GameCube's always a surprising one.
Yeah, 21.74 million units.
For such a beloved console, like everyone knows about the Wii, like the GameCube, but then you compare PlayStation 2. There's 200 million PlayStation 2s got sold, and only
55, I think it was, or something.
Some crazy amount, yeah. But the GameCube is still very highly regarded.
Because if you look at the GameCube, if you look at the top 20 titles on the GameCube,
just banger after banger, yeah.
Absolute industry-defining, just amazing games that helped actually categorize what 3D gaming was, how to perfect the formula after the first generation of 3D consoles. It's the GameCube had some excellent games, Metroid Prime, Wind Waker, Resident Evil 4. There are so many games that are still beloved to this day that came from the GameCube.
And it had a handle.
It did.
It had a handle.
And you could walk around like it was a lunchbox and take it to your friend's house. And that was the thing, is the GameCube was... I remember it being quite cheap. I don't remember exactly how cheap it was, but it was cheap. It was small. You could just bring it round to your friend's house. It had 4 controller ports built in.
Yep.
It's it was a great console, but again, Nintendo did not do a great job at the time, and there was just the juggernaut that was the PS2 to compete with.
And it didn't play DVDs. It's one of there's that great breakdown out there of if they just made it sell. If it had played DVDs, they might have gotten away with it, because they released it a couple of years after DVD players were the norm, and I think their reasoning was, we can make it cheaper if it doesn't play DVDs. And they didn't realise that, but the reason PlayStation 2s were so successful is that people were buying it as a DVD player and as a console. Because it was, for the first couple of years of its life cycle, the PlayStation 2 was cheaper than a DVD player, even ones made by Sony. And Nintendo could... I think we'll never know.
No, we won't. And that thing is just... That was so hard to compete with. But, with the Wii U, the PS4 started out fine, but they didn't have a great momentum from the PS3. The PS3's a bit of the dip for Sony in terms of the 5 PlayStation consoles. It had the least momentum out of all of them. The Xbox One had terrible marketing at launch. I think by the time the Wii U had come out, obviously they'd both gotten a bit more. They'd had I think a year or so to kind of get on top of releasing games and having better marketing and stuff. But the Wii U didn't have something like a PS2 to compete with at launch that could fuck it over completely. And yeah, it still managed to mess it up.
After the Wii, I think that's what makes it so bad as well. That's why for a lot of people in the industry, they were thinking, is Nintendo just going to not make consoles anymore? Because they stole...
How poorly the Wii U was doing at the time, is the rumour was that maybe they're just going to stop making consoles.
Maybe they're going to go, they'll go back and make a handheld. And then instead they went, no, what, we're going to make both. We're going to do both at once and outsell fucking everything.
And I think, maybe, just to round out, we can...
Let's go.
Just talk about, the video games themselves.
Okay, yeah. Let's. What are the highest selling video games or what have you on there?
Well, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, right?
Yeah.
Mario Kart 8, sorry, because Deluxe is the Switch version, but...
Haven't they sold more copies of Mario Kart 8 than they sold Wii U's?
No, so Wii U Mario Kart 8 managed to sell 8 million, 9 million units. I think it's something like 8.92 million, which means 75% of people who had a Wii U got it.
That's crazy.
And then after that, went on to sell 53 million on the Switch as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, as a game, yeah, there's been more copies of what was initially a Wii U game being sold than there were Wii U's in existence.
Yeah, by many fold. If you include the Switch version, yeah.
Yeah, there are more copies of Mario Kart 8 out there than there are Wii U's.
So, I just want to talk about the launch lineup.
Okay, let's see.
How badly did this go? And bear in mind, this is 2012, so most of these games had already been out for a solid year or 2 or 3.
Okay.
So launch games are Assassin's Creed 3, Batman Arkham City Armored Edition, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, Darksiders 2, Epic Mickey 2, Sports Connection, ESPN Sports Connection, FIFA 13, Funky Barn, Game Party Champions, Just Dance 4, Mass Effect 3 Special Edition. First, big exclusive one is New Super Mario Bros. U.
I was going to say, did it launch with a Mario thing, right? Okay.
But I was
just thinking.
The New Super Mario Bros. U, where a lot of kind of the more mainstream talk was that people are kind of fed up with the New Super Mario Bros. Style at this point. This was the 4th one, and people were kind of getting a bit tired of the same, art style and direction and stuff with those games. You had Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge, which I believe was the fixed version of Ninja Gaiden 3.
I think, yeah, there's a weird thing about that's the best version of the game up until the re-release.
One legitimate port that wasn't a much worse version of the game that came out 2 years later playing way worse. Because that was, for example, Arkham City and Mass Effect 3.
Yeah,
they'd come out a couple of years ago and they were bad ports.
And they cost full price as well, because that was the problem, wasn't it? It's not just that it's an objectively worse looking version of the game that runs worse. It cost as much as it did when it was brand new, when you could pick it up second hand for the Xbox 360 for
a $5 at the time, yeah.
And you could buy a pre-owned Xbox 360 and every launch title on the Wii U for less cost than the Wii U in one game.
Yeah. Then Nintendo Land, Rabbids Land, Scribblenauts Unlimited, Sing Party, Skylanders Giants, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 Wii U Edition, which did have the Mario, Luigi, Peach outfits.
Yeah, okay, I will say that was pretty fun.
That was funny. Transformers Prime the game. I don't know why they need to add the game, but yeah, sure. Warriors Orochi 3 Hyper, Wipeout 3, Your Shape Fitness Vol 2013, and Zombie U. Many of which were either quickly ported off the Wii U, or again were bad ports of old games that were super cheap.
There's not a killer app on there, is there?
I would argue if it was a pack-in, Nintendo Land would have been. But because you had to then go buy it separately, it wasn't.
It could have been that generation's Wii Sports. And it's baffling that they didn't include it. One of the reasons Wii Sports was packaged, people don't know, they packaged Wii Sports with every initial Wii sold, is because it was the easiest way to get across to people, this is how the motion controls work. Because all you do is you put it in, it's a tennis game, swing like a tennis racket, and now you understand. And how did they not put Nintendo Land in with the Wii U?
It's so hard to communicate why the Wii U is a innovative, fun idea but then I don't need to explain it to people. I need to show them Mario Run on Nintendo Land, and everyone I played that with went, "Oh, I get it. This is super fun. This is
like
awesome."
the Switch, isn't it? Of like, how do you expect you to pull the controllers off and hand them one?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's baffling of like every console that has like a unique gimmick like that needs that thing that's packaged into the game. Like, was it like with PlayStation 5? Is it Astrobot's Play World? Is it? Where it's like, oh, here's all the new features of your controller.
The new
to play through this.
Like every time, when the PS5 came out, it was like, pass them the DualSense, put Astrobot on, and they're like, my God, I can like feel the tip taps running through my hands like as he's running over different things. It's like, yeah, it was included in the console, and like, I fail to believe that like the extra money they got from like buying, selling Nintendo Land separate was worth not having that game to just like show off the capabilities of that console immediately.
Is that thing? People come around to your house, isn't it? Oh, you got the new console. Show me what it does. What does the gamepad do? And if if you had any game on that list except for 3, there was nothing you could do to show them why that was a value add to the console.
Mm-hmm. And like even the Mario game, New Super Mario Bros. U, it's like, well, what can the person on the gamepad do? Oh, they can click on the screen and add a platform. Okay. Great. Like, it's not really selling anything to me. It's not really got anything going for it.
It's so frustrating to like think about of like, how was that not packaged with the game?
Mm-hmm.
How did they not do that? Just say it's like as a value add of like, this is to sell on the gimmick, the format.
And there were quite a few other fantastic Wii U games over the time. We had the Super Smash Bros. Game on there, Mario Kart 8, Pikmin 3, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. Obviously, Breath of the Wild was like there, but also on the Switch.
That was a very wise decision.
There's so many Wii U games that were great and great enough to just get ported to the Switch.
Yeah, which means it's now virtually there. Yeah, I think it was like Zombie U might be the only game on that list.
No, that's on Xbox and PlayStation.
Oh, okay then. So in which case then there's almost nothing on that console of any value.
There's Nintendo Land maybe, and a couple like there's Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD, but again, they are just ports of games you can play elsewhere. But those kind of
sad, isn't it?
The only real 3 games off the top of my head. I know there's a couple more, but like that I can think of that didn't just end up on Switch and make Wii U almost completely defunct.
Yeah, the fact that like it has virtually nothing that it did that is not able to be replicated,
and a virtual console which was super in depth, and you had access for a long time, not anymore, to virtual console both for the Wii U and the Wii, which also had a really sprawling library. And in terms of like a virtual console machine, the Wii U is impeccable. It's got nearly every single Zelda game on there. As like a Zelda fan, that makes me very happy. And it's like they did a lot on there, but now you can't buy those either, so there's even less of a reason to have a Wii U.
Never. Like, I will give props to Nintendo for having the balls for like 15 years after it got released to release a final patch for the 3DS that all it does is stop you from modding it.
Yeah.
Like, the absolute balls to be like, we're literally not going to support this thing anymore. We're going to release one more patch and all it does is make it impossible for you to mod.
Yeah, they made 2 updates to the 3DS 7 years after they stopped selling it, and it was to shut down the shop and then stop you modding the console.
So you can go and play it.
Just the biggest fuck you.
It's a great idea. It's that thing of like, I kind of respect it as a move of no fuck you. And yeah. If you've got any thoughts on like, what was your favourite Wii U game or bad video game movie adaptation, let us know in the comments, and also let us know which Wiki you thought won this week.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for watching. I hope everyone enjoyed our little Nintendo podcast by accident this week.
Yeah, the accidentally Nintendo. I can't wait for this to get a copyright struck because Nintendo.
They just hear the word Nintendo.
Did you see
John
that?
Leguizamo, and they're like, no, shut it down.
Do you see that thing about like the Mario movie where they said in the Mario, the new one, the new Mario movie has the Jumpman game in it, which means that Mario exists in the Mario universe, which means that Mario and Luigi in that game might have got a cease and desist letter from Nintendo for using their IP.
Oh, dear. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Cheers.